From censored files to clear evidence, this is Redacted Realms.
The first time I saw the basement door ajar, the scent of damp earth and something coppery, like old pennies, seeped into the hallway. I heard it then. A low, wet, rhythmic sound from the darkness, like something heavy being dragged across a concrete floor. My father's voice, usually warm, came as a whisper from behind me. "Some places, son, are meant to stay forgotten." His hand on my shoulder felt like ice, but the whispers didn't stop with him. They came from the walls at night, a chorus of frantic, overlapping pleas scratched into the very plaster. Years later, holding a faded Polaroid I wasn't supposed to find, I finally understood. The happy man in the photo with me was smiling in front of that same basement door, and in the corner of the frame, almost cropped out, was a pale, slender hand, its fingers curled around the doorframe from the inside. The monster in our home wasn't something that visited, it was something he kept. A handwritten note that reads, "I was with you." For 20 years, the Interstate highway killer evaded justice, and my father's signature was on every single alibi. Warm, sun-drenched home video footage. The grainy image shows David Miller laughing as he pushes a young girl on a swing in an Austin backyard. To everyone in our neighborhood, my father was the definition of a stand-up guy, but that perfect snapshot hides what I would come to know. Beneath that sunny Texas exterior lay something far darker. He was the mid-level accountant with a firm handshake, always ready with a joke to ease the tension. He coached my Little League games, his voice a steady, encouraging presence from the dugout. He never forgot an anniversary, his punctual cards arriving with a scent of old paper and ink. He was reliable, an anchor in the mundane, until the day that constancy itself became the most terrifying thing of all. The video shifts to a montage. David repairing a neighbor's fence, laughing at a backyard barbecue, beaming during a family Christmas. His dependability was his anchor. "Your word is your bond, Sara," he would tell me, his voice steady and certain. That simple promise would soon feel like a haunting echo from a vanished world. I believed him. We all did. Sara Miller, now 28, sits alone. The only sound is the distant, rhythmic drip of a leaky faucet from another room. Sara clutched a coffee mug, her gaze fixed on the rain-streaked window. She first heard the name, Marcus Voss, at 17, back in 2011. Every television channel was broadcasting the same grim story. Authorities had finally captured the suspected interstate highway killer. He was a long-haul trucker, a ghost on the interstates. The evidence they found was grisly, visceral, and impossible to ignore. Yet for at least 3 of the murders, he had an alibi solid, corroborated, airtight. It was a contradiction that froze the investigation in its tracks. How could one man be in 2 places at once? The sheer impossibility of it hung in the air, thick and metallic, like the scent of ozone before a storm. The alibi was a fortress, built on timestamps, witness statements, and security footage. But the evidence was a silent, screaming testament to something else entirely. It whispered of a truth that defied logic, a horror that slipped through the cracks of reality. This left investigators staring into an abyss. They had a monster, and they had a man who couldn't possibly be that monster. One of these things was a lie so profound it threatened to unravel everything they thought they knew. A friend swore Marcus was with them that night, playing cards hundreds of miles away. The authorities never released the friend's name, claiming it was to protect him. My dad watched that news report, his face draining of all color. The scent of his cold coffee and the dread hanging in the air are what I remember most. He whispered, "Poor families. To think he had someone covering for him." The words carried a chilling, absolute certainty that hung in the air like a physical weight. The apartment smelled faintly of dust and old coffee. Outside, a distant siren wailed, then faded into the oppressive quiet. Sara stared at the laptop, the screen's glow etching deep shadows under her eyes. Her fingers hovered above the keyboard, frozen. The monitor's blue glow illuminated her face, casting stark shadows across her features. 6 months ago, my father died, a sudden heart attack. The air in the room felt thin and metallic, like the moment before a storm breaks. It was over before I could even process the words. While my mother sorted through his study, she discovered a locked metal box. Not a safe, just a simple lockbox. The key was on his key ring, labeled storage. Inside weren't stocks or bonds. The receipts were meticulously preserved, dated, itemized slips from diners, truck stops, and motels. Each one traced a chilling path along the I-35 corridor, from Dallas to Oklahoma City to Wichita. The dates spanned an entire decade. A decade of calculated stops and silent departures. A musty scent of old paper and distant asphalt clung to them, whispering of countless nights on the road. Every receipt was made out to Marcus Voss. The air in the diner felt heavy, thick with the scent of stale coffee and something metallic. Sara's voice dropped to a whisper, her fingers tracing the faded paper. Then, underneath them, handwritten letters. The letters from Marcus didn't carry the menace I'd expected. Their tone was almost grateful. laced with a familiarity that unsettled me more than any threat. The scent of old paper and distant ozone clung to the pages. A cold, papery texture beneath my fingers. A profound, quiet dread settled in the room, far heavier than fear. The phrase echoed relentlessly in my head. "Thanks for being my guy, Dave. You're a true friend. I owe you." But that name, Dave, struck a dissonant chord. No one ever called my father Dave. To everyone, he was always David. The air in the room grew thick, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old coins and dust. Sara's hands shuffled through the papers, her fingers growing clumsy with tension. Then she froze. The rustling ceased. A single form lay beneath her fingertips, its texture waxy and cold. Her breath hitched. It was a carbon copy witness statement from the Lubbock County Sheriff's Office. Dated 2008, the document detailed the whereabouts of David Miller and Marcus Voss on October 12, 2007, the night a young woman vanished from a roadside rest stop. The air in the room grew heavy, carrying the faint scent of old paper and dry rot. At the bottom of the page, my father's signature sat neatly in black ink. Its simple presence there, in that context, ignited a deep, crawling dread. Sara's voice fractured with realization. This wasn't discovering a forgotten note from a past romance. It was a deliberate chronicle of deceit, laid out before her. The air grew thick with the scent of aged paper and a faint, metallic trace of fear. My father, the methodical accountant, had maintained a ledger documenting his betrayal. I couldn't bring myself to confront my mother with this. Instead, I drove deeper into the city's forgotten industrial quarter, where the air carried the metallic scent of rust and decay. The rhythmic thrum of the engine was the only sound against a landscape of profound stillness. Not yet. I had to understand. I started digging. What I unearthed was a truth more chilling than any ghost story. Marcus Voss was serving life without parole in a supermax in Colorado. No visitors ever came to this place. No contact from the outside world. A true dead end. The air carried the scent of stale coffee and old grease, clinging to everything. His voice was a low rasp, the words measured and heavy, like stones dropped into still water. Outside, the rain whispered against the glass, the only sound in the world that seemed to matter. Mike, a retired long-haul trucker and friend of her father's, exhaled slowly, the scent of stale coffee and diesel clinging to the air. "Your dad and Marcus?" He said, his voice a low, gravelly whisper, as if the memory itself was something fragile. Yeah, they knew each other. Way back, a heavy pause settled between them, thick with unspoken history. Before you were born, even. Back in those lean years, we ran jobs together just to survive. David found his way out, got clean, and used his mind to build a legitimate life. But Marcus, he never left the life. The streets kept their hold on him. Sara's voice cuts through, sharp and accusing. Did you know he was giving him alibis? Mike shifted uncomfortably, stirring his coffee with mechanical repetition. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, thick with unease. "Sara, your father was loyal to a fault," he began, the words tasting bitter. "He believed in ride or die, even for friends who had changed. I think he thought he was helping an old buddy out of a jam." It began with a simple misunderstanding. I don't think he ever grasped what Marcus truly was, not in those initial moments. The air in the room grew thick and stale, carrying the faint metallic scent of old pipes. Sara. And later, that's when the quiet scratching began inside the wall. Mike just stared, his silence a confession louder than any word. Loyalty, that was the word he used.
Not complicit, not accessory. The same virtue he preached to me my whole life was the one he used to blind himself. The air grew heavy with the iron scent of truth, and my breath hitched in my throat. Sara returned to her apartment, now transformed into a war room of obsession. The stale air carried the scent of old paper and desperation as she stood surrounded by the evidence. Every receipt date, every alibi statement, she had cross-referenced them all against the map's crimson markers. The pattern that emerged wasn't just coincidence, it was a trail, and it led to a truth more terrifying than she'd imagined.
At first, the early disappearances matched his pattern perfectly, but then I noticed something he'd missed entirely. The alibis vanished in 2010, leaving a year-long gap, an entire year before Marcus was ever caught. The map's pins halted abruptly at 2010, like a timeline severed by an unseen hand. Sara's voice grew taut. If his loyalty was so absolute, why did it end there? Then, beneath a stack of yellow documents, her fingers brushed against one final page. The air in the room seemed to grow dense, carrying the faint, metallic scent of old ink and dust. It wasn't in the box. I found it taped to the back of his old desk drawer. A printed email from my dad to an anonymous encrypted account. My fingers trembled as I peeled the brittle tape away. The paper smelled faintly of old ink and dust. The room's air grew heavy, thick with the scent of secrets long buried. Each line on that email felt like a weight settling in my chest. I read the first words, and a cold, sticky dread seeped into my bones. The silence around me wasn't empty. It was waiting. The date was November 2010. An email window glowed on a dark computer screen. Marcus. This ends now. The last one, she looked like Sara. She was Sara's age. I gave you my word. but I didn't give you my soul. Do not contact me again. The next time they ask, I won't be there. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes as a sudden metallic scent filled the air. Her breath hitched, the weight of the implication pressing down on her like a physical force. He had seen a photograph of a victim, a girl who looked exactly like me.
That was the line he wouldn't cross. His loyalty had a limit, and it was my face. My own features became the boundary of his allegiance. The air in the room grew thick with the scent of ozone and something metallic, like old coins. He didn't go to the police. He never confessed, but simply stepped aside. He allowed the next alibi to crumble, watching it fail with detached stillness.
The air grew heavy with the scent of stale coffee and old paper as Marcus was ensnared.
All without ever admitting his own role in the silent, calculated betrayal.
He granted justice to later families while the early ones, their cases were forever tainted by his deception. The truth had poisoned those initial investigations beyond salvage, leaving only hollow echoes where answers should have been. Sarah sits in the same chair, but now daylight filters through dusty windows, revealing her exhausted, hollowed-out expression. Her voice is barely a whisper as she asks, "So, what do I have left?" He was no murderer, but a custodian of a predator's liberty. For years, his twisted duty was to shift the light elsewhere, letting the darkness fester. The air grew heavy with the scent of damp earth and old copper. His resolve shattered only when he saw his daughter's terror mirrored in the vacant stare of a victim. She lifted the family photograph from its hook, her eyes lingering on her father's beaming face. In life, he was a pillar of the community, a beloved hero, but he was also the man who drew a line. His line was my own reflection, something he refused to see, something he chose to stop at. And because he stopped there, a cold, hollow part of me still struggles to let go of the forgiveness I want to feel. Sarah sets the photograph down, her gaze locking with the camera. Her expression collapses into a profound, silent anguish. For what of the families from before 2010? Their closure is a mere legal technicality, a stroke of his pen. Do their daughters not look like someone's daughter too? The air in the room grew heavy, thick with the scent of old paper, and a deeper, unnamable sorrow. My father's secret wasn't an affair or hidden fortune. It was a vacancy. A space he carved in the timeline where a killer could exist, unseen. The air in our old house still carried the faint, metallic scent of his deception. He was the alibi. That trustworthy face made the impossible seem attainable. He taught me your word is your bond, a promise etched in iron. Yet his word bound those families to a lifetime of gnawing uncertainty. The metal lockbox closed with a soft, definitive click. So, who was he? The man who raised me? Or the signature that set a monster free? What would you do with the truth?
If this file opened your eyes, subscribe and open the next case.